I'm V and welcome back to the Wanderlust Reader, and today I'm going to be giving some recommendations for books that feature LGBTQ plus storylines / characters. In the last few years there have been more and more published books with LGBTQ plus characters in them and storylines, and that representation of the queer community is getting better all the time, which is only a good thing. So these are the 5 that so far I've read that I would recommend, and the first of those is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan and its sequel Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Ngan. There's a third book coming out in, I think it's November of this year, which actually I still need to pre-order. I read this obviously a few years ago now and I absolutely love it. It's a female-female relationship and I'm just like, more fantasy books like this please. So it's obviously a fantasy novel about a girl called Lay who gets taken to the royal court to be one of the Demon King's paper girls. The paper caste is the lowest caste in this world and the only fully human group. There is then the demon caste, and there's one in the middle that I can't remember exactly what it's called. The one in the middle sort of has human and demon features, and the demons are based on animals. So the king in this world is part of the demon caste, and the demon caste are the ruling caste. And he is like a humanoid bull, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's a little bit weird. I'm not the biggest fan of the world building in this, but I love the relationship. I love the storyline. I just love Lay and her love interest. That's basically what's keeping me reading through this entire story. And Natasha Ngan writes really well as well. The second one is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I don't have a physical copy of this yet, which is kind of sad. So this book follows Addie, a girl called Addie, as she makes a deal with the demon in order to live forever. The catch is that everyone she meets will forget her, and that's basically the storyline. It's set over, I don't know, about 300 years, so it's sort of a dual timeline going on. And Schwab has, on the record, described both Addie and her love interest as bisexual. And it's never made a big deal of in this book. It's just part of who the characters are. And it is nice that this is where we are with queer characters in literature. It's quite a slow book. It's quite introspective, which I really, really like. There is her Shades of Magic series as well, which, as a bonus number 1, is the Shades of Magic series by V.E. Schwab, which features a male-male, I think, relationship, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's not one of the main characters, it's one of the side characters. So you don't really see a lot of it. But in this one, it's just there. It's just present in the story and it's just accepted, and it's not the point of the story, which I think it's nice, as I said, that we're at this point. Number 3 is another one I don't have a physical copy of, and that is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this is about an aging Hollywood star who has decided to tell her life story to a journalist. It's female-female relationship. I can't really say where or who it is without spoiling the book, but the twist at the end is heartbreaking. I love this book because as it goes along, you're going through the story and you start to suspect what's going to happen, and it's like this really slow, tension-heavy build-up. I absolutely loved it. The tragedy, the drama, just the two characters together. And it's set in the 1950s, 60s, I think. So it was in a time when in Hollywood you weren't allowed to be gay. There was no acceptance of it. You get married to someone of the opposite sex just to maintain face, to maintain your career. If you come out, your career's over. And in opposition to Addie, that's how it was. And I think it's really interesting to look back and see over the last 50 years, even though things aren't perfect now, the contrast between the two, to go from a time when it was the end of your career in something like Hollywood, it could have been the end of your career in many places, to Addie whereby it's just like, yeah, bisexual, whatever, move on. I think that's an amazing thing to see. This 4th book is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo, and this is a snapshot of life in Britain for Black women and queer people. And it's set over, I think the earliest story is the 1950s and the latest one is over in the 2010s. So there's 12 perspectives in this story and 12 stories which are all connected. It's a very diverse novel and includes a lot of different representations, including a non-binary character, which again, it's that seeing how far we've come and how things have changed, and in some cases how they haven't, how things are still difficult for some people. It's mostly about queer women That's kind of the point of it, but there are some male representation in there as well. And again, it's slow, and at first you don't realise how all these stories are connected, but by the end you understand how they are all connected to each other, and I think it's a fascinating way to write a novel. The last main one on the list, I've got one more bonus after this one, and that is Affinity by Sarah Waters. And this is the first Sarah Waters novel I've read, and currently the only. I've been meaning to read more of hers since I read this one, really, but I just haven't got around to it yet. It's set in the Victorian period, and it follows a lady as she visits women who found themselves in prison. There, the lady visitor meets a woman named Serena, who attracts her with her strange story. It is a really sad book, but again, it really shows the difficulties entrenched in the history of the LGBTQ plus people, because obviously this is set in the Victorian period when, even more so, probably the 1950s America, it was, I mean, for men, it was just plain old illegal. I don't think it was ever illegal for women. I think I remember reading that they just didn't care enough about women, what women were doing to make it illegal. It's slow and it builds, and I'm beginning to figure out that I actually quite like this sort of book that is slow and builds and just adds this tension as you go along, and you start to suspect what's going to happen, and you know that this heartbreak is coming, but you just can't look away because it's so well done, and you just have to watch the car crash very slowly into the wall. So the last bonus is a series called The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. I haven't reached the end of it. I've read 3 trilogies in the series, but this is kind of a bonus for anybody who's really into epic fantasy. They're big books, it's a big series, there's 5 trilogies in the series altogether, and all the books are 600 to 900 pages. They're epic. But there is a character that goes through all of them. I'm pretty sure. I don't know about the ones I haven't read, but I suspect that the character is also in those ones, who just adds this little bit of like queerness to it, essentially. And the underlying themes of the book really do resonate with what's happened with queer people and the way queer people have been treated, and the way homosexuality and transgender and those sort of queer identities have been viewed, treated over time, and still are in some cases, unfortunately. A lot of it is a metaphor for that, or at least that's the way I and some others have read it. It's an epic fantasy series that just sort of subverts, and I really like that, but not in a overly obvious way. If you're into epic fantasy and you want a series that includes that sort of, and it is really, really good. It's heartbreaking, it's sad, it's tragic, but it's really, really good. But it just sort of has that subversion of norms and does have queer representation in it for you. So that is all of the books that currently I may be thinking of something I've read a bit slightly more recently that isn't coming to mind. But those are the 5 and 2 bonus series / books that I would recommend currently that feature LGBTQ plus characters and storylines. So if you have any books that you would like to add to this list, drop them in the comments below. Like if you like, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you next time with another video.